What's up, guys? Thomas Mott here. Welcome into a Sunday kind of breaking news show. I'm at church, and then I get the notification that Philadelphia has made a trade for a quarterback, and Josh, of course, is at a CrossFit competition, so just me here for a quick update. Giving you guys my thoughts on why Philadelphia would trade for yet another quarterback. Remember, they did the whole quarterback stuff in the offseason, DTR, Kenny Pickett, and now right before really cuts are happening tomorrow, there was one cut made today. Philadelphia is out there again making some moves, and so I figured I'd jump on here, answer some questions, give you guys my take on what's going on with Tanner McKee's hand, and then, of course, why they would want to go ahead and grab Sam Howell. So first off, just so people are joining in right now, we know what's going on. Here is the official trade. You see it up there on your screen, and the Philadelphia Eagles have officially sent a 5th-round draft pick in 2026 and a 7th-round draft pick in 2027. And that is for, of course, Sam Howell. And then, of course, give a 6th-round draft pick back as well. Sam Howell's on a very cheap contract. You see it right there, $1.1 million. Nothing crazy here, so not much in terms of a cap hit for Philadelphia. This move has a couple of ideas and a couple of options, the first of which I think has to do with Tanner McKee's health. Now, I'm going to show you an update from Mike Garfolo here in just 1 second where he's saying that Tanner McKee is just fine, but I would argue that it's not necessarily a... as cut and dry as people are saying. As I get the chat loaded up here, make sure people can see everything, what's going on. And so, yes, cuts are happening tomorrow. Josh is out of town. He comes back tonight. Either way, thoughts here on Sam Howell. First off, Tanner McKee is not as healthy as everyone is telling us. And let me prove that to you by showing Mike Garfolo's tweet here. This is the narrative they want you to know. Tanner McKee's finger injury, which we know happened, that's why he hasn't played in the preseason game a couple of days ago, isn't expected to keep him sidelined very long, and he won't land on injured reserve. As Commander reported, the Sam Howell trade was more about added depth than a short-term injury issue for Tanner McKee. Now, Tanner McKee is not going to go on injured reserve, so he's not going to miss the first 4 games of the season, but he's likely going to go ahead and miss at least week 1. And so Howie Roseman, after watching preseason, they clearly are not high on Dorian Thompson-Robinson. He will be cut maybe today, likely tomorrow. They clearly wanted to make sure they had a legit backup for week 1 against the Dallas Cowboys in case the worst were to happen with Jalen Hurts. Obviously, hopefully not going to happen, but let's say Jalen Hurts went down week 1. They would not have Tanner McKee available, and they would have to go ahead and insert Kyle McCord. If you watch the preseason, you watch my recap of the preseason, which is up on my channel right now, you know that Kyle McCord, he's a rookie. He just doesn't look as ready as, you know, a backup quarterback should, at least in Philadelphia. They want somebody who could just walk right into the football game and throw a couple of touchdown passes like Tanner McKee did as a 3rd stringer last year against the Dallas Cowboys. We forget that very similar situation where the starting quarterback that day went down. It was Kenny Pickett. In comes Tanner McKee. He has a great time, and the rest is history. Tanner McKee is now the guy. So, is Tanner McKee's hand injury serious? No. Is he going to be ready for week 1? The answer is also no. And so Philadelphia looked around the National Football League, and they wanted an experienced veteran. And Sam Howell is that. We forget that Sam Howell, at least versus the Philadelphia Eagles, whenever he was the starting quarterback with the Washington Commanders, pretty good. I mean, I had the stats pulled up. I don't see them right now, but threw a couple of touchdown passes to Jahan Dotson, and overall has proved himself to be not a legit starting quarterback in the National Football League, but a decent starting quarterback in the National Football League. And so now you got to get him in the building and get Sam Howell up to speed as quickly as possible. That way, if you need him to play, less than 10 days from today, he's going to be good to go in an emergency situation versus the Dallas Cowboys. What will happen with Kyle McCord, I think, is pretty simple. I think Philadelphia will go ahead and release him tomorrow or Tuesday, whatever, they want to do it early or do it by the deadline on Tuesday. Then they will try and re-sign him back. And if you're Kyle McCord, you're likely want to come back to the team that drafted you. You've had an entire offseason learning with the quarterbacks. They want Kyle McCord in Philadelphia. They just don't want him backing up week 1. Howell, you get him ready to go, emergency situation. Then what gets interesting, and I'm curious y'all's thoughts down below in the comments section, what do you do once Tanner McKee is back and healthy? Because you just traded for Sam Howell. Do you then release Kyle McCord? Do you cut Sam Howell? Do you try and trade Sam Howell? I know a lot of people are saying trade Tanner McKee. I don't see Tanner McKee being traded at all here. This, to me, is simply Tanner McKee's hand is not as healthy as people are telling us right now, and Philadelphia wanted some additional help behind him. So let's go to some comments here. Everybody in the chat, be sure to go ahead and drop a like. Quentin Field says, it's strange. It's strange, but it does make sense because Tanner McKee is a little bit hurt. And there was a story, actually, I talked about on my recap show on Saturday morning, so yesterday, and it was Tanner McKee not dressed for the Friday night preseason game versus the Jets, and he has an injury on his throwing hand. They say it's a non-surgical injury, I think on his pointer finger, but he had it in his pocket basically the entire game. Multiple Eagle beat writers were watching Tanner McKee on the sideline from the Jet Stadium, and they saw that he was holding everything with his left hand and never took that right hand out of the pocket. That kind of indicates to me that, one, he can't use it right now, and two, probably a little bit more banged up than people realize. And so once they officially figured out that Kyle McCord, following his third preseason stint, is not ready to go to be a backup quarterback, Howie Roseman's probably been working the phones the past couple of nights and finally found a pretty interesting trade here with the Minnesota Vikings, which, by the way, the Vikings, after trading Sam Howell, they signed Carson Wentz to be on their 53-man roster. And so funny how the world spins around here. Philadelphia trades away Carson Wentz. He's been all over the place. Kansas City's backup last year, and then now signs with the Minnesota Vikings after the Vikings traded us Sam Howell a couple of hours ago. So pretty crazy there right now. Keep dropping your comments down below in the comments section. Michael Max says, LOL, poor Carson. What was the trade compensation? I'll pull that up for you guys right now. I already showed it, but in case you are joining late, here it is. So Philadelphia is going to give up a 5th-round draft pick next year. You remember they have a ton of draft picks in 2026, and so a 5th-round draft pick is not a lot, but 5th-rounders are pretty decent. I mean, you can still get a decent player there, and so Minnesota obviously probably liked that offer, and a 2027 7th-round draft pick. That will offset the 2026 6th-rounder that Philadelphia got back. And so this is a pretty standard trade. This makes a ton of sense. And don't be surprised if the Minnesota Vikings take this 5th-rounder that they just acquired from Philadelphia and use that in a trade package for Adam Thielen, as I thought that would be something that would happen this weekend, but there are reports that the Minnesota Vikings are interested in Adam Thielen. And of course, this all comes because Mike Garafolo is saying that Tanner McKee has an injury that is not expected to keep him sidelined for a long term. Won't go on injured reserve, according to Brooks Cabana. But they wanted to add some depth behind him, and so it definitely makes a ton of sense, I think, for both sides, because the Vikings love JJ McCarthy, and Philadelphia loves Tanner McKee whenever he's healthy and ready to go. And what you don't want to have happen is Jalen Hurts goes down in a very winnable game against the Dallas Cowboys week 1, and then Philadelphia were to lose that football game because Kyle McCord throws a couple of picks and looks like a fish out of water and is not exactly ready to go. The Striped Goat says Howell is a serviceable 3rd stringer, but I hope he doesn't get any playing time. I would 100% agree. Rohan Shingala says we give up too much for him, I think. A 5th-rounder, maybe. But at this case, the Minnesota Vikings understand that Tanner McKee was hurt, and they clearly wanted to make sure Philadelphia paid top dollar for who Sam Howell's a solid backup. You go around the National Football League right now, and Sam Howell would be ranked a top 10 backup quarterback in the NFL. If Tanner McKee is kind of the best backup quarterback in the NFL, Sam Howell at least has double-digit starts in the NFL with the Washington Commanders a couple of years ago, and he's won some football games and played very well against the Philadelphia Eagles. People might forget that happened because the Commanders are all Jane Daniels this, Jane Daniels that, but as Let's Go Philly said, Howell carved up the Eagles a couple of years ago. I like this pickup, and so it makes some sense. How much did we get for Carson Wentz? We did not sign Carson Wentz. We signed Sam Howell. And then there's Trenton Wright says Wentz is Herbert without the fanboys. Could be. He could be Herbert without the fanboys. Bobby says, I think this is super simple. McCord just not good enough. He will be signed on practice squad. DTR is done. Sam Howell and McKee will remain on the roster. We're not going to trade Tanner McKee. And I do think that takes me into the second part of this quick live here, just to jump on and give you guys my thoughts. This is not setting up for Philadelphia to trade Tanner McKee, whether it's in the coming days, mainly because he's injured, or at all this season. Philadelphia's made it incredibly clear after 2017, they always want to have a very, very good backup quarterback in case the worst were to happen, because happened in 2017, you needed Nick Foles, then you needed it again in 2018, and we forget, during the 2022 run, Jalen Hurts missed basically the final, 2-3 weeks with that shoulder injury he suffered versus the Chicago Bears. And they had Gardner Minshew, a backup quarterback, very much in the mold of Sam Howell, who was at least experienced in the NFL. Because if you were to throw Kyle McCord out there right now, Philadelphia could win games, but it would be extremely difficult. I know Kyle McCord on Friday night was playing with 3rd stringers and 4th stringers, but even with those guys against 3rd and 4th stringers, because remember, it's, two sides to every coin here, he didn't play well. And so they want to make sure they have the Gardner Minshew there. They want to make sure they have somebody to fill in. And I think Tanner McKee is going to be out a little bit longer than people realize. This whole idea that Tanner McKee jammed his finger, can still grip a football, can still throw it, I'm not buying it right now. I think he has a fairly serious non-surgical injury on one of his fingers on that right hand, and it could be 2 or 3 weeks. So while Philadelphia didn't want to put him on IR for the full 4 to 6, they could still keep him off of short-term IR, but only have him sit for 3 weeks and then let Sam Howell be the emergency quarterback and back up there and ready to go. And remember, in the modern NFL, post the Brock Purdy injury in the NFC title game a couple of years back, you can keep 3 quarterbacks on the roster without taking up a roster spot because of the emergency quarterback rule, which Kyle McCord will be, right? So Kyle McCord is now 2 plays away from being the starting quarterback of the Philadelphia Eagles versus, 1 play away, which would just be absolutely scary and not necessarily something that I would, or I would want. Conversations Living Room with RJ says, is this the sign that Tanner is going on IR? No, I just talked about that. They have said that they are not going to put him on short-term IR, which, they could lie. They could do that tomorrow if they wanted to, but according to multiple insiders, that is not the necessary case. Did we get Justin Simmons? No, we did not get Justin Simmons. It is exactly what Axe Max just said. This was just a trade to be extra safe. Bruce says, it sounds like they're going to move Tanner McKee. They're not moving Tanner McKee. If you follow Philadelphia at all this offseason, they love Tanner McKee. They think Tanner McKee can start for a number of quarterback-needy teams right now in the NFL. They feel like his growth has been that impressive. What they want to do with Tanner McKee is let him be the backup this year. In case, heaven forbid, Jalen Hurts goes down, Tanner McKee could win you football games. I think Tanner McKee could win you playoff games with the current roster Philadelphia has. Then, next offseason, there's a bunch of quarterbacks in the NFL draft. Some quarterback-needy team will not get one, and then maybe they make a phone call for Tanner McKee. They trade for him, get a 3rd-round draft pick, a 4th-round draft pick. I don't know if you get much higher, but we'll see. And then, of course, you go ahead and draft another quarterback in the offseason. Hopefully, Kyle McCord is now a year smarter, a year better in the Bird system, and you continue the quarterback factory that we all laughed at. But Philadelphia has clearly become just that over the past couple of years. And so, interesting move today, though. I'm a little surprised here. If they would have loved Dorian Thompson-Robinson, they could have just kept Kyle McCord as the backup and kept Dorian Thompson-Robinson. The fact that DTR did not play at all in Friday's preseason game is a very clear indication he just doesn't have it. And it's surprising because you would have thought the mobility of Dorian Thompson-Robinson would make him sort of a kind of a likely candidate to back up Jalen Hurts. And they gave him a lot of opportunities early on in training camp and early on in the preseason, and he just didn't seem to have that ability. And so DTR will be cut, if not today, tomorrow, or for sure by the deadline on Friday. Tanner Plumley here with the super chat. If I can get that up on the screen, I think I got it right there. Tanner says, per Mike Garfolo, Tanner's finger isn't expected to keep him sidelined. Yeah, this is the report that I was showing you guys on the screen, but I appreciate the $10 anyway. The Sam Howell trade was more about added depth, and I think that best sums it up right there. It makes the most sense. Another move Philadelphia did make, he's on the thumbnail right now in Minnesota Vikings gear, is Lewis Cine. So the first cut the Birds have made so far as they go from 90 down to 53 was cutting safety Lewis Cine, who we talked about on my Friday recap as someone who never was healthy enough for Philadelphia. I mean, Lewis Cine basically did not play in the preseason until, 1.5, maybe 10 days ago, 1.5 weeks, 10 days ago. He did play in the second half versus the New York Jets. He had a nice interception, but Lewis Cine, after a really great college career, started his career with Minnesota Vikings. We thought that he could be somebody, got hurt, missed a ton of time. Philadelphia signed him middle of the season last year, virtually for nothing, and put him into the safety mix, and he just couldn't find his footing. And so now Philadelphia has officially 90 players on the roster because they get rid of one. That was the ability to go ahead and sign Sam Howell, and they will start making cuts likely this afternoon. We'll update you guys whenever they do. Definitely tomorrow, and then by Tuesday's deadline where they go from 90 down to 53. And so Lewis Cine is the first to go ahead and be let go, and it will not be the last. There'll be a bunch of other players. We expect, guys, remember this, Kyle McCord will be cut. They will then sign him back to the practice squad to be that third-string emergency quarterback. So this is Howie making sure that he dots all of his I's and crosses his T's, and they doesn't have any sort of serious concerns heading into week 1 versus Dallas, because Philadelphia's first 4 weeks, we talked about this in the show, are tough. And if an injury were to happen, they now have at least an experienced backup quarterback to be ready to go. So, okay, if anything else happens, because Philadelphia could make more moves, we talked about Asante Samuel Jr., Justin Simmons, a trade for a cornerback. We'll jump on a live here. Josh is going to be home. I was texting him right now. He should be home in a couple of hours. And so the next live we do will likely be with Josh Davis. So if you guys are wondering about that. But Philadelphia made a trade for a quarterback. It's one who I think is going to be pretty decent in terms of a backup ability. We'll see how long he stays on the roster because they want to keep Kyle McCord once McKee is healthy. But this is not an indication that Tanner McKee is going to be moved, I don't think. And if they were to, I would be pretty surprised. So drop a like. If you're just joining us, go ahead and rewatch. I'll end the stream here and you can watch from the beginning to get my full reaction. But Howie Roseman keeps making moves. He loves trades in August. Will he do another one? We'll see. I'm Thomas Mott. Quick live here. More shows happening later on this week, including Monday and Tuesday. Cut day. It's going to be crazy. This has been the Thomas Mott Show.